Once again, hello. This is lecture 3 of module 1 and it's called aggression or submission, both in the animal kingdom, insect and bird kingdom, as well as the human kingdom. Sit back and enjoy. Right. Many years ago, when I was working as a game ranger for the Kangwani Parks Corporation in South Africa, we were instrumental in reintroducing leopard back into the depleted environment that was previously cattle and goat grazing. And it was land belonging to the local tribe. The mother leopard had been killed by lions, leaving 3 small cubs which were found in her lair inside the Kruger Park and promptly sold to us. We kept the cubs in a large enclosure and fed them up until they were actually mature enough to be released back into the wild. Even at that early age, the cubs used to exhibit extreme aggression towards me and everyone else invading their enclosure. Even at, once again, at an early age, the defending trigger was highly developed. The mother leopard will always hide her offspring in a cave or in very thick bush to protect them against hyenas, pythons, and most importantly, man. The ultimate predator in the animal kingdom is that upright, bipedal, sweating primate called Homo sapien, and with his dangerous brain and mobile thumbs and very horribly efficient weapons. This same predator is also capable of stealing food, taking over territory, and implementing species genocide at will. Aggression is an inbuilt survival mechanism, as is submission. Animals have perfected advanced rituals in both. Most of the displays are symbolic. The bloody fight to the death does happen with regards to females and territory, but are mostly avoided with advanced and exaggerated threat displays and squaring up normally used. The same goes for submissive displays, with the opposite body language of the former. This is called Darwin's principle of antithesis. I once crept up on a cheetah on a kill once. Very foolish, but I was young and careless. She killed an impala and she was busy feeding in the plain, so I jumped out the Land Rover with my camera and leopard crawled up to quite close to where she was. She immediately turned around and warned me off, as you can see by the picture, which, wanting a full and happy life, I did. So they're very protective over their food and very protective over their cubs. So aggression and competition for food is a huge factor. Protective behavior can take so many different forms. Sorry, go back. So, for example, the pangolin or the millipede, has a form of armour as a form of its actual protection. Then you get the camouflage, which are tiger stripes, your type of leopard spots, etc. You get the counter shading principle once again. You get threat displays, warning signals, growling, posture, facial contortions. Often you find baboons and lions, when they face each other over a distance, they yawn a lot, showing their teeth, showing their fangs, so to speak, towards each other. You get the startle displays, like eyes on the wingtips, by very bright, flashy colours. You get playing dead. Now that's a puff adder, which is one of South Africa's most dangerous snakes. It's called has what they call a cytotoxic poison, which basically what it does, it destroys the tissue as well as the central nervous system. But they play dead because the reason being is that their camouflage looks very much like dead leaves. And as a result of that, they rely on the camouflage as well as thanatosis, which is basically playing dead, to avoid being eaten. Unfortunately, when you're doing a safari in the bush, you must always stand onto a log and then step over. Don't just step over the log, because the chances are there's a good chance you might find a snake on the other side, relying on its camouflage to be not seen, and then you go and stand on it and end up getting bitten. Not a very good thing. Then you get the type of what they call the mob displays. You find it often with birds when they try and get to mob animals away from their nest. You find it with elephant and buffalo as well. I mean, I was doing a walking safari in the Sabi Sand, and we came across this herd of buffalo. And instead of running away, they all advanced forward en masse to try and intimidate, as well as to observe what we were doing. And as we walked away silently and carefully, always facing them, never turn your back on any animal, always keep facing them, they eventually settle down and they calm down. Now that's for animals that can change, and they can't change their facial features. For example, a lion can change its feature like any other cat, but a rhino can't. So a rhino will use more of its body language as a threat display. It's characterized by head lowering and kicking off the front and hind feet. The horn is double nodded up and down, much like we shake our fist at a rival. Snorting is loud and shoulders humped in preparation for a charge. Choosing a good tree to climb is normally a very good policy. Then we get the elephant, unmistakable and extremely intimidating. Display that seems to be almost supernatural in its intensity. The ears loom large to make the elephant seem larger. Flapping is increased due to the increased heart rate and anxiety, that's flapping of the ears. The trunk, being a sensitive organ, is at first raised high to scent probe, then tucked out of the way to bring the tusks into play. Striding forward, stretching tall is next, which normally precedes a head shake and turning away, or a full-blown charge. An elephant in anger does not trumpet. It screams, as we would, to bolster courage, to paralyze the enemy with fear, and is a result of an adrenal dump, whereas the adrenaline system kicks into overdrive, flooding the muscular system with power. Just believe me, an elephant screaming with rage at you is not a pleasant experience at all. Lion. Highly contorted facial displays with extremely loud roaring and top lip pulled back to expose the fangs. Tail is normally whips from side to side that heralds an imminent charge. The intensity of the eyes leave no doubt of the intensity of the intent, so to speak. Ears are laid back, claws are unsheathed for traction and tearing, and the horror of the situation was quite graphically entailed in a very famous case called the Man-Eaters of Tsavo, when two male lions basically stopped the production of a railway in East Africa by killing a lot of the actual workforce before being dispatched. Same with the leopard, very similar to the lion, with the exception that the leopard is more apt to charge from concealed cover, whereas a lion, unless it is in thick bush, is more inclined to charge from a distance to gain momentum for a bone-crunching impact, followed by the mauling and tearing. When we used to hunt leopard and track leopard when they've been wounded or they've been ill, we used to wear a crash helmet, as the cat will scalp you with its front claws if it gets onto you. A neck brace or a thick scarf, as they will attempt to tear your throat out. 3 pairs of trousers and as many shirts as possible, as they will disembowel you with their back claws acting like spinning circular saws. As can be imagined, not a very pleasant experience. Termites. The soldier termite's duty is to protect the queen and the huge castle-like structure constructed by the workers, commonly known as a termite mound or termitarium. Through actual genetic manipulation, they are formed with either chopping jaws or a funnel-shaped head adapted to shoot a chemical compound. The second a mound gets attacked by an ant-bearer man, they charge en masse without regard for their own personal safety to the attack site and sacrifice themselves, often in their thousands, to try and halt the attack. As they attack, they release a pheromone that spurs the others behind them into a psychotic bloodlust, enraged beyond reason to kill and destroy. The generals marshal the troops with no regards to the numbers being killed. Workers act as support groups, ferrying out the dead and the wounded. And even whilst this is happening, workers deep inside the mound, far away from the war zone, start to manipulate the actual genetic code of the formless larvae, just being hatched from the featureless eggs in huge egg chambers into future soldiers, ready in time to make up for those lost in this attack. The actual similarity to the First World War, with its recruitment centres, medical and orderly backline, to unbridled carnage and ferocity of the front line, is both striking and deeply unsettling. A termite species in French Guiana has perfected the suicide mission of its soldiers. On nearing an enemy, they explode themselves, releasing a sticky corrosive substance that sticks to the enemy and either blows them up or corrodes them. Once again, the unfortunate correlation between suicide bombers and napalm can't be ignored. A hollow, unsettling fact. The main reason for aggression and submission in the natural world is attributed mainly to the competition between the different and same species for territory. Food, females and procreation, food being paramount. I myself have witnessed literally hundreds of kills and have noticed some interesting salient facts. Though aggression in this context is both applied with 100% efficiency and necessary, I am struck with the almost total absence of malice and hate. In fact, once a prey is subdued and killing can begin, it is almost with reverence that the other members of the pride, pack or family wait until the last expiral breath before they commence feeding. Lions and most cats suffocate their prey before feeding. Hyenas and Cape hunting dogs, however, run the prey down, tearing at the underside of the belly and the genitalia. The shock and blood loss eventually bringing the animal down to be consumed whilst alive. Once again done with an inescapable lack of any type of malice or wanton cruelty, though cruel this method of hunting undoubtedly is. The difference with aggression when it comes to territory is both spectacular and often fatal. As you can see, that male lion's just brought down that young zebra foal. Fights can be to the death occasionally when it comes to territory, and injuries can and do occur. The highly ritualized displays mentioned earlier go quite a way to mitigate this, however, and is often the preferred option between the opposing forces. However, when it is over females that things get serious. The basic reproductive drive is the most powerful in all organisms and is closely tied to aggression. Man is no exception. The aggression unleashed is then to its full potential, and the ferocity is unprecedented. Fatalities are often and major injuries almost guaranteed. A new male lion in a pride, after he has defeated the dominant male, will first kill all the cubs with a spine bite, then chase off all the sub-adult males. The shock of seeing the cubs newly killed then triggers the female's reproductive system, and she comes back on heat soon after. Brutal, yes, but necessary for gene flow and stable immune transfer between populations of lions in a given ecosystem. That upright, hairless, intelligent, and devastating effective primate called humans. I personally have conducted countless walking safaris and the effect that we have as a human shape is both effective and startling. Animals that have a Hollywood reputation run off in fright and will avoid us at all costs. In an open Land Rover where they cannot perceive the human shape because we are sitting down, we can approach with impunity to a much closer yet safe and respectable distance. Yet, whilst I was working as a scuba diver in Mozambique, I was struck how approachable the marine life was. I rode turtles and whale sharks, chin-stroked moray eels and huge potato bass, got cleaned by cleaner wrasse and felt comfortable free diving with sharks that had a bad, undeserved reputation. Yet, in the African bush I was a pariah, to be avoided at all costs, and worthy of the most complete aggression should I be foolish enough to think I might be accepted. Certain individuals have shown that through time and effort we can regain the trust that we used to have with wildlife. And we can utilize the same water hole together without threat displays or anything like that. But as I said, especially in areas that have been affected by war, by politics, by poaching, overhunting, etc., that's going to take a lot of time. Right, however, as shown in the next section, we need to look at ourselves first and take a leaf out of the Natural World Handbook and survival, if indeed we need to survive. Way back in 1983, I was a soldier. I was doing basic training in the South African Air Force. Training to achieve a certain mental and physical level that once achieved would enable me to function effectively in a war zone where we would soon be sent. On phase 2 of this training, which lasted approximately 9 months, we were taught, practiced and perfected a shooting technique called Drake shooting. In thick bush, which was our theatre of operations, the enemy had quite numerous places to hide and to plan an ambush. When the shit hit the fan, we dove down to the prone position and carefully fired 3 rounds into any available cover that we thought the enemy might be hiding. The fact being that the bullets would either hit the enemy or force him to break cover where he could be dealt with by proper aimed fire. This technique was perfected with devastating consequences to the enemy in the Rhodesian War. All this is covered in my autobiography, entitled Soul Safari, A Journey into the Wild. The reason why I'm on this subject is that nature has given us a most valuable asset, and that is culture, a capacity to work out solutions to problems and then pass them on. War has been a feature of our existence since we first started thinking laterally and expansively, and accompanies our sometimes delight in genocidal killing, ethnic cleansing, then coupled with spring tides of bloodletting. The millions of dollars are spent on perfecting technology to kill and annihilate our own species with absolute horrific intent. I'm aghast and disgusted that some, scientists went to the natural world, bypassing its carnival of life, with its Big Dipper of natural selection, its Ferris wheel of courtship displays, the amazing and colourful stores where winning and losing is the end of the game, and instead headed straight to the house of horrors, emerging with such delightful products as germ warfare and biological warfare, using our co-inhabitants on this earth to breed psychopathically in concentrated mutated forms, straining at the confines of the test tube, eager and impatient to kill and destroy the same species that created them. We've been searching for intelligent life in the universe for decades now, and so far we have heard or seen absolutely nothing. Miles of data is analysed daily, searching for a signal, a code, a binary shift in a light spectrum, anything, but so far, nothing. I mean, I wonder if Earth and its inhabitants are a bit like the obnoxious drunk in the corner of the bar, throbbing for a fight, and perpetually alone, since no one with an ounce of sense would approach such a creature. With all the zillions of stars and galaxies out there, and our searching, we have still heard absolutely nothing. Just a thought, really. I mean, human aggression takes on a dark rainbow of forms. Yet one instinct, like a bolt of black lightning, distinguishes us from the natural world and surely removes us farther from it, and that is the ability, the reasoning, and the want to wallow in hate. Leaving aside now the industrial application personified by the military, let's turn our attention to the individual organism in a social setting. Having lived for many years in Japan studying martial arts and philosophy, I have been constantly surprised at the scientific application of force perfected by thousands of years of hard physical training. From the heartbreaking, pathetic pictures of teenage suicide pilots having a last drink of sake on some lonely airstrip before strapping himself into an aerial bomb, adjusting his flimsy leather helmet, then flying off into a Japanese sunset, ready to plunge into a 50,000-ton juggernaut that is hell-bent on shooting him out of the sky before he even got there, to the intense training of the ninja warrior who was able to kill using nothing but 2 fingers. The application of aggression has a long and fascinating history. And the Japanese are very interesting. I mean, that picture there is of the Yasukuni Shrine in Tokyo, where the souls of the dead who were killed in war go. They're interesting in a sense that deadly force is implied in a social setting rather than applied, leaving a person's own survival mechanism to respond, usually beating a hasty retreat. At nightclubs, which are often frequented by aggressive military servicemen, I have seen firsthand the incredibly techniques employed by security staff. Often just a cold stare and a body posture is sufficient to instantly shut down an aggressive situation. The East has learnt what we in the West have just begun to understand, the importance and reality of what I call the vibe. Simply put, is it not strange that a whole atmosphere in a room can change by the presence of a person's mood or body language? The air thickens and becomes almost palpable. No words need to be said, yet the intent and atmosphere are unmistakable. Same as inside of a church. I mean, there's nothing going on in there, but yet it seems to be heavy with some presence, some feeling, like something's about to happen. I don't know, but I can really feel it in certain areas, like in a church, sometimes in the bush as well, which we'll get to in a minute. I believe this is our spirit, the indefinable something that is real to us as is time, and is our true selves that inhabit this earthly, slowly decaying body. I believe this is our spirits communicating, yet being in a physical dimension, we put it down to a vibe. That's the only word we can find, or one of the few words we could find to describe it. Now, this samurai used to have a training course where there were 7 doorways that a warrior had to pass through. Behind one of those doorways, and it changed every time, was a second warrior with a wooden club, ready to knock the man out cold when he walked through, changing his position every time. Over time, and a few sore skulls later, the warrior could perceive with 100% accuracy which doorway the man with the club was behind. He could not tell how he knew, he just knew. This, I believe, is the application of spirit. Another interesting thing is the gladiator sports. In the early Roman times, it was a blood sport, it was a fight to the death. It was bloody, people got chopped up into pieces, often by lions, often by each other, and yet people flocked to watch this spectacle, almost like a bloodlust. The actual fighters themselves were famous in Rome, and sometimes they won their freedom and the affections of the ladies concerned as well. And yet we still have this want to see things like this. Often at a car accident, for example, you find people rubbernecking to hell. I mean, I might even see a body. We have this some kind of a tendency to want to observe violence and to watch violence and enjoy violence. And in Roman times, it was a fight to the death. Often whilst guiding walking safaris in the African bush, my sixth sense became alerted, and I aborted a planned route, just to find out later that there was a lion kill with 2 hyper-aggressive females feeding, or a lioness with cubs, or an old aggressive elephant or buffalo. I mean, the natural world sharpens our spiritual survival skills resident in our spirit to a fine edge. The industrial world gets to dull our spirit, allowing misplaced aggression that is meant to be elsewhere to manifest in situations where it has no place at all. I mean, I'm often really perturbed as well, about the prevalence of ultra-violent video games which show in graphic detail the carnage that can be unleashed by the simple press of a thumb. The horrific beheading videos done in the name of religion and easily accessed by a keyboard number and watched by many normal people as a thrill or a dare. The violence meted out at nightclubs, on street corners, often alcohol-based, and without any regard to consequences. Strangers going all out to hurt and destroy so they can feel like a man, but often feeling with remorse after the event. The knowledge of the difference between good and evil is a necessary part of existence. I remember playing cowboys and Indians when I was a boy, or being a good policeman, with my imagination fertile and growing as I shot or arrested some evil thug in the tapestry of my mind, saving the damsel in distress, or righting a wrong perpetuated against a weaker person. That, I feel, is where human aggression and submission is important. The knowledge of self-protection, family protection, and the eradication of evil. Not going out with the intention of battering a stranger to gain respect or to be more of a man. Submit to your wife or husband. That's me and my wife having a bit of a silly selfie session during lockdown. Submit to your parents, to your superiors at work, or to people who are worse off than you. Love is more easily carried than hate. Much so. The Chinese have a saying that hating somebody is like taking poison and hoping that your enemy dies. By all means, destroy and annihilate those who would do you harm, destroy your family or your life. Theodore Roosevelt said, walk softly but carry a big stick, learn to understand before applying force, and most importantly realize that the acts of violence are often irreversible and were very often very unnecessary. Aggression has its place in the natural order of things, as human society has shown. Over actual millennia, with the threat displays, the double territory sizes, the procreation of the species, and also, especially in the human realm, the submission and love is just as important and often requires more strength. Hatred is ultimately self-destructive, both physically and emotionally. I believe that spiritually and physically we were designed to defend ourselves, conquer new territories, provide for our loved ones, and protect the vulnerable. That is the reason for aggression. Hatred is unthinking, uncaring, and leads to one destination, your own personal hell, that as you get deeper, the walls get steeper, and eventually there is no escape, just a slow liquidation of your psyche, spirit, and your physical body. Okay, I want to thank you for listening to me. Thank you for listening to this last lecture about aggression and submission. I think we've seen it a lot, especially now as we go into the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, etc., where we become more centralized, more stay at home, and people have had to cope in different ways, had to cope with each other when they can't go out. Territory size, have to work our territory. That now we're forced to stay in our territory, and I've seen often, especially with the wearing of the masks, the human face is no longer visible. And the children are growing up with seeing half a face. And people are starting to get annoyed more by somebody when they can't see, they can only see half the face. Which I think is actually, I think we go a lot by our facial recognition signals, our facial expressions either illuminate or devastate a situation. And unfortunately, with the wearing of the masks, that has actually been halved. And I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's good to stop the disease. I think it's good to stop the actual COVID spread. But socially, it has caused problems, and it is causing problems. And the sooner we get over this, the better. Anyway, was aggression and submission. See you on the next lecture. Thank you very much.